A soft reboot. If there's one theory that keeps coming up whenever fans talk about what happens after Secret Wars, it's the idea that the MCU is heading toward a soft reboot. Not a full reset where everything gets erased and restarted from scratch, but more like a restructuring of reality itself. And honestly, if Marvel wants to introduce mutants and potentially recast some heroes without confusing new audiences, this might be their cleanest option. In the comics, massive multiversal events like Secret Wars often end up with reality being rebuilt into a single, unified timeline. Entire universes collapse, fragments merge, and when the dust settles, the world still exists, but not exactly as it used to. Characters remember things differently, some events still happened, others didn't. It's not a reboot in the traditional sense, it's more like history being rewritten around a new foundation. Applied to the MCU, a soft reboot would allow Marvel to simplify its increasingly complex continuity after the multiverse saga. Instead of dozens of branching timelines and variants, Phase 7 could begin in a reality where mutants have always existed, the Fantastic Four didn't need to be pulled from another universe, certain heroes were active long before the Avengers formed, and this would let Marvel introduce major comic concepts without needing long-winded, multiverse explanations every time a new character shows up. And it will also open the door to something the studio has been avoiding: recasting iconic roles. A rebuilt timeline could feature a new Tony Stark, a younger Steve Rogers, or even entirely different versions of existing characters, not as variants from another dimension, but as native parts of this updated reality. And that means Marvel can refresh its lineup without erasing the emotional weight of the Infinity Saga. And more importantly, it would give Phase 7 a clear starting point for a new saga. The Avengers era fades into legend. Mutants emerge as the next evolutionary step, and the world begins grappling with a future shaped not by gods or aliens, but by humanity itself changing from within. In other words, a soft reboot wouldn't mean the MCU is starting over, it would mean it's evolving. And just like in the comics, sometimes the only way forward for a universe this big is to rebuild it from the ground up. Avengers vs X-Men. With mutants already beginning to surface across recent MCU projects, Phase 7 finally will be the moment where their presence becomes official. After Doomsday, of course. And if a brand new species of superpowered individuals suddenly starts appearing all over the world, there's one group that's almost guaranteed to step in, and that's the Avengers. That's why so many fans believe Phase 7 could adapt one of Marvel's most explosive comic storylines, Avengers vs X-Men. In the comics, the conflict begins with the arrival of the Phoenix Force, a cosmic entity tied heavily to mutant kind. The X-Men believe it represents hope, a chance for mutant survival after years of near extinction. The Avengers, on the other hand, see it as an existential threat capable of wiping out entire planets. Neither side is evil, neither side is wrong, but both believe they are the only ones capable of protecting the future, and that ideological divide quickly escalates into open conflict. Now imagine how easily this could translate into the MCU. If mutants are suddenly introduced into the sacred timeline after Secret Wars, governments would panic. The public would be divided. Are mutants the next step in human evolution, or are they a threat waiting to happen? The Avengers, already tasked with protecting the world, would likely feel responsible for maintaining global stability. Meanwhile, the X-Men would be fighting to ensure mutant rights and survival in a world that fears them. And this sets up the perfect philosophical clash. The Avengers want to protect the world as it exists, and the X-Men want to protect a future where mutants have a place in it. And when fear meets survival, conflict becomes, like Thanos would say, inevitable. And what begins as disagreement could spiral into the MCU's next major superhero civil war. And if Phase 7 leans into this, Avengers vs X-Men could become the cornerstone event of a mutant saga, replacing the Infinity Stones or the multiverse as the MCU's central narrative engine. And Kevin, if you want a $3 billion movie, I mean, this story is writing itself. Blade, Midnight Suns, and the supernatural elements. While the multiverse saga has focused heavily on timelines, variants, and reality-breaking science, Phase 7 might pivot in an entirely different direction: the supernatural. Instead of threats from alternate universes or cosmic warlords, the next era of the MCU could dive headfirst into magic, demons, and ancient horrors. And if that happens, one of the biggest signs will be the rise of characters like Blade and the eventual formation of the Midnight Suns. The Midnight Suns are essentially the supernatural equivalent of the Avengers, a team brought together not to fight aliens or robots, but vampires, demons, and occult threats that traditional heroes aren't equipped to handle. Members have included characters like Ghost Rider, Moon Knight, Doctor Strange, and Blade himself. These aren't heroes who deal with physics-based threats. They deal with possession, hell dimensions, cursed artifacts, and entities older than time. And the groundwork for this already exists in the MCU. We've seen chaos magic through Scarlet Witch, we've explored the dark dimension with Doctor Strange, you've got Moon Knight, and even Werewolf by Night that opened the door to classic monster horror within in Marvel's world, so Phase 7 could connect all of these elements into a full supernatural corner of the MCU operating in the shadows. And that's where Blade comes in, a daywalker caught between the human world and the vampire underworld. Blade is the perfect bridge between grounded heroes and mystical threats. His introduction wouldn't just mean fighting bloodsuckers in alleyways, it could signal the existence of an entire hidden ecosystem of monsters that have gone unnoticed while the Avengers were busy dealing with alien invasions and multiversal incursions. From there, the Midnight Suns could form in response to a threat that science simply can't explain, something demonic, something magical, something that doesn't care about time travel or Infinity Stones. So instead of saving cities from falling out of the sky, these heroes would be saving souls, fighting entities that corrupt reality from the inside out. If Phase 7 want to feel truly different from what came before, leaning into supernatural storytelling might be the way forward. The MCU Phase 7 will focus less on Earth. For most of its history, the MCU has told stories that are grounded, at least geographically, on Earth. From New York invasions to Sokovia falling from the sky, even its biggest disasters have usually hit close to home. But Phase 7 could mark a shift away from that. With cosmic threads already teased across Phase 4 and 5, there's growing reason to believe the next saga might spend far more time out among the stars than on city streets. Projects like Eternals already expanded the MCU scope beyond Earth's atmosphere, introducing celestials and ancient cosmic history that exists on a universal scale. And with Reed Richards officially entering the franchise, advanced science and interdimensional exploration are almost guaranteed to become a bigger part of the narrative. Reed isn't just a genius, he's the kind of mind that pushes humanity into spacefaring territory. And this could naturally lead into Phase 7, exploring off-world civilizations like the Shire Empire, or even deeper cosmic conflicts that don't revolve around Earth at all. The MCU has already hinted at larger galactic politics through Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain Marvel, but those stories have mostly operated on the sidelines. A new saga might finally put cosmic storytelling front and center, turning the universe itself into the main stage. However, even if the spotlight shifts outward, Earth won't become irrelevant. There will always be a place for street-level heroes dealing with grounded threats that cosmic teams might overlook. Characters like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, The Punisher, maybe Iron Fist, and Luke Cage represent a completely different scale of storytelling, one focused on crime, corruption, and personal stakes rather than planetary survival. In fact, this split could benefit the MCU moving forward. Cosmic heroes tackle universal threats in space, while street-level protectors keep their cities safe back home. Miles Morales is gonna be the new Spider-Man. One of the more interesting Phase 7 theories floating around is the idea that the MCU finally introduced Miles Morales, not just as another Spider-Person, but as the future Spider-Man of the franchise. And if Marvel follows the comics even loosely, Avengers Secret Wars could be the exact event that makes that transition possible. In the comics, Miles didn't originally exist in the main continuity. He was from the Ultimate Universe, aka Earth 1610, where he took up the Spider-Man mantle after Peter Parker died. But during Secret Wars, the multiverse collapsed. Entire realities were destroyed and merged together into a new, rebuilt universe. And when everything was restored at the end of the event, Miles wasn't sent back to his original world. Instead, he ended up on Earth 616, the main Marvel universe, permanently. That one change brought Miles into the same reality as the original Peter Parker, allowing both Spider-Man to exist side by side in the same world moving forward. And that's exactly the kind of multiversal rewrite the MCU is heading toward. If Secret Wars merges timeline or rebuilds reality into a single sacred timeline, it could easily introduce Miles as someone who wasn't originally from this universe but now belongs here. This would let the MCU do something that feels organic instead of forced. Rather than replacing Peter overnight, Phase 7 could see Tom Holland's Spider-Man slowly stepping into a mentor role, guiding Miles the same way Tony Stark once guided him. Peter remains in the world but no longer carries the full weight of the Spider-Man identity alone. It would also align perfectly with Marvel's ongoing legacy theme: Steve passed the shield, Clint passed the bow, Natasha's mantle lives on through Elena, and in Phase 7, Peter Parker could pass the mask. If Marvel adapts this post-Secret Wars reality shift the way the comics did, Miles arriving from a destroyed universe into the main timeline wouldn't just introduce a new Spider-Man, it would quietly begin the next era of the MCU, led by heroes who inherited the roles of those who came before them. X-Men will replace the Avengers. For over a decade, the MCU has revolved around one central team, the Avengers. From Phase 1 all the way through the multiverse saga, Earth's mightiest heroes have been the face of Marvel's cinematic universe, the ones who step in when the world is on the brink. But by the time Phase 7 begins, there's a growing theory that this era might finally shift its focus away from the Avengers and toward an entirely new flagship team, the X-Men. Phases 6 through 7 have effectively told the story of the Avengers, their rise, their unity, their fracture, and their legacy. But with many founding members gone and the mantle being passed down to successors, the MCU may be preparing to retire the team as its central pillar, not erase them entirely, but move them into the background. Because if mutants begin to emerge en masse after Secret Wars, the world's biggest concern may no longer be alien invasion or rogue AI. It could be the next step in human evolution. And that's where the X-Men come in. Unlike the Avengers, who are celebrated as public heroes, mutants have historically been feared and misunderstood. Their stories aren't just about saving the world, they are about fighting for acceptance within it. Themes like discrimination, identity, and coexistence have always been at the core of X-Men's storytelling. And if Phase 7 introduces mutants into the sacred timeline, those themes could become the emotional backbone of an entirely new saga. And instead of who will protect Earth from external threats, the question becomes how will humanity react when the threat is internal? Mutants aren't visitors from another planet or creations of science experiments. They are born, they are human but different, and that makes them harder to trust, harder to regulate, and far more politically volatile than the Avengers ever were. Replacing the Avengers with the X-Men wouldn't just mean a new roster of heroes, it would mean a shift in storytelling tone, from global unity against cosmic threats to societal division over genetic change. The House of M adaptation. If Phase 7 really is building toward a mutant saga, then there's one comic storyline that fans have been waiting over a decade to see adapted properly, and that's House of M. And with Scarlet Witch mysteriously disappearing at the end of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness without an actual on-screen body, many believe her return could finally set that story in motion. Wanda Maximoff's journey in the MCU has always been tragic. Introduced in Captain America the Winter Soldier, she went from experimental subject to Avenger, lost her brother in Age of Ultron, lost Vision, and ultimately broke reality itself in WandaVision. And by Multiverse of Madness, she had become the Scarlet Witch in full, warping reality in a multiverse scale before destroying Mount Wundagore in what appeared to be a final act of self-sacrifice. But in Marvel, nobody usually means no death, and that's where House of M comes in. In the original storyline, Wanda suffers a mental breakdown and reshapes reality into a world where mutants rule, a peaceful utopia where her family is alive and happy. Everyone gets their ideal life. The Avengers are revered, mutants are the dominant species. It's perfect, except it's a lie. Eventually, characters like Wolverine begin to remember the original timeline and realize that Wanda has rewritten existence itself. Now imagine this post-Secret Wars. The MCU timeline is rebuilt, but unstable. Wanda returns, either resurrected or pulled from another universe, and instead of creating a small illusion like Westview, she creates a global one. A world where mutants have always existed, where Magneto is her father, where Vision lives, and where everything is right. This could become Marvel's cleanest way to introduce mutants into the main MCU continuity. When the illusion eventually breaks, when reality snaps back into place, the fallout could leave behind millions of newly manifested mutants. In the comics, Wanda's famous line was, "No more mutants." But the MCU could flip it. What if Phase 7 ends with more mutants? This would make House of M not just a character study for Wanda, but the inciting event of the mutant saga itself, a reality-altering mistake that permanently changes humanity and gives rise to the X-Men in the aftermath. There won't be any original Avengers. Back in 2012, the Avengers brought together the original lineup of Earth's mightiest heroes and officially defined the MCU's identity. Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, Hawkeye. That team carried the Infinity Saga for over a decade. But by the time Phase 7 rolls around, especially after Avengers Secret Wars, there's a very real possibility that none of those founding members will still be active within the MCU. Some of their exits have already happened. Tony Stark sacrificed himself in Endgame, Natasha Romanoff did the same, Steve Rogers passed on the Captain America mantle and retired from the front lines until he came back, but we can all agree that these weren't temporary departures, they were narrative conclusions. The MCU made it clear that the Infinity Saga was as much about legacy as it was about victory, and now the remaining original Avengers seem to be following a similar path. Clint Barton has already stepped back, mentoring Kate Bishop as the next Hawkeye. Thor has begun shifting toward a more reflective job, no longer the brash warrior he once was. Bruce Banner has evolved into Smart Hulk, focusing more on guidance than frontline combat. Each of them feels less like an active Avenger and more like a mentor preparing the next generation. And that next generation is already forming. Phase 7 could be the moment where this transition becomes official. No more original Avengers leading the charge, just the heroes who inherited their ideals. If Secret Wars acts as a soft reset, it may serve a symbolic farewell to the founding team, not by erasing their legacy, but by ensuring the world they protected can move forward without them. Their influence remains, but their presence fades. And that would make Phase 7 the first era of the MCU, built entirely without its original pillars, a universe defended not by those who started the fight, but by those who were inspired to continue it. MCU slowing down output. After years of back-to-back releases across both film and Disney+, many fans believe the MCU may intentionally reduce its output moving forward. And honestly, looking at how phases 4 through 6 have unfolded, that shift might not just be likely, it might be necessary. During phase 1 through 3, Marvel followed a much tighter release strategy. Only a few films came out each year, which gave audiences time to breathe between major events. That slower pacing allowed stories like the Avengers, Civil War, and Infinity War to feel like true cinematic milestones. Each movie had time to build anticipation, develop characters, and contribute meaningfully to the overarching narrative. The Infinity Saga benefited massively from that restraint, and every release felt like an event. Phases 4 through 6, however, expanded the MCU in an entirely new direction, with the introduction of Disney Plus shows alongside theatrical films. The number of yearly projects increased dramatically. On one hand, this allowed Marvel to explore new corners of its universe, street-level heroes, cosmic threats, supernatural lore, and alternate timelines. Characters like Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, and She-Hulk may never have received the spotlight without this expanded format. But the trade-off has been audience fatigue. With so many interconnected projects releasing in quick succession, some viewers began to feel overwhelmed. Missing one series could suddenly make a future movie harder to follow. The multiverse saga's complex storytelling also meant that certain plot threads took years to resolve, sometimes losing momentum in the process. If Phase 7 scales back to the number of yearly releases, Marvel could return to a more focused storytelling approach. Fewer projects would mean more time for development, stronger scripts, and higher production quality. It would also give audiences space to reconnect with characters without needing to keep up with multiple storylines at once.